Ah, the stew pot. If there's a more enduring or endearing symbol of hearth and home, I don't know what it is. From the dawn of cookery, when water simmered in animal hides stretched over campfires, through the ages of clay, bronze, iron, and steel, cooks have continually fed and fed from their stew pots. A tough hunk of mastodon here, a snaggled bit of taproot there, all rendered edible and nourishing through the combined efforts of time, heat, and water. Problem is, all that time, heat, and water tend to blur the individual notes of the ingredients into a murky monotone. If you ask me, a stew, or a culture for that matter, should be more like, well, a barbershop quartet. All right, fellas, hit it. Now that is called harmony. Each part an individual, but completely in sync with the whole. That's what I want out of a stew. This is homogeny, as in homogenized, as in boring, like that stew over there. So, can we produce a stew that sings a nice C major 7? Well, I imagine with the right ingredients, a little science, and a couple of well-chosen tools, we might just be able to make a little music of our own on... Suppose I were to ask you to define the word stew. You might say a shortened version of the Scottish name Stuart, or to dwell on something negatively. But you might also offer a dish composed of chunks of meat and vegetables cooked and served together in a flavorful and potentially thickened liquid. And you know what? You'd be right on all three counts. Of course, you might also say that it is the verb stew, the traditional cooking method by which a stew is produced. But if you ask me, the key to a stew isn't stewing, it's braising. And although braising is indeed related to stewing, there are some significant differences. Stewing involves cooking small pieces of food. Braising calls for large pieces, which limits surface area and therefore limits moisture loss from the target food. Unlike stewing, which calls for submersion of the food pieces in liquid, braising calls for a relatively small amount of liquid. That means less chance of producing watered-down flavors. Remember, water is a solvent. Stewing, often achieved in an open vessel. Braising calls for a tightly lidded vessel that prevents moisture loss via evaporation and helps to tenderize meat through the slight elevation in vessel pressure. And perhaps most importantly, while stewing always calls for cooking ingredients of different natures together, braising applications often call for separation of meats and vegetables, and that makes braising the precision choice, even when the desired dish is a stew. Let's prove the point. Here are some of the more popular stews from around the world. Beef bourguignon from France, Hassenpfeffer from Germany, Wat from Ethiopia, Brunswick stew from America. If you have your Good Eats interactive remote, just go ahead and vote for one. I'll wait. Go ahead. Go ahead. Wow. Hungarian goulash. Well, that is certainly a classic of the form. Well, let's find some meat, shall we? I'm actually glad you chose goulash because it is going to allow us to delve into a part of that critter that we have not delved into very much in the past. I mean, we've dealt with the rib primal in 2 shows, the tenderloin, 2 shows. We've cooked short loin, sirloin, tail, skirt steak from the plate. We've dealt with a 7-bone steak from the chuck, and we have cooked brisket. No wonder cows give me dirty looks when I drive by. Anyway, the best is yet to come. The short ribs, which hailed from both the chuck primal and the plate primal down there. You know, we really need a better visual here. There. This is a little bit better. Now, as you can see, ribs 1 through 5 are in the chuck area, and the ends of ribs 6 through 12 are in the plate. Although there isn't much meat to speak of on 9 through 12, the front plate ribs render some nice meat. But for my money, and we're not talking about a lot of money here, the chuck ribs provide the best mixture of meat, fat, and connective tissue. When it comes to buying short ribs, we have choices. How many? Let's find out. My good man, I require some short ribs.
All right. Would you like chuck or plate?
Gee, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. What are you going to use it for?
Stew.
Ah, then you want plate. It's got more connective tissue, so it's better for slow cooking. Now, would you like whole, English style, or flanken?
Oh, he's really opened up a can of worms now. Gee, I don't know what that means. Educate me.
Well, whole, clearly, is 1 whole rib with the meat cut parallel to the bone. English style is just half of that. Flanken is a cross cut that contains the meat of several different ribs.
Very nice. Now, what would a cook do with something like that?
Most of the ones that I sell end up as Korean short ribs.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Marinate that in soy, ginger, garlic, and green onion. Grill them hot and fast. Oh, it is good eats, if I don't say so myself.
If you don't say so myself. Well, that sounds great, but I think I'll take 3 pounds of the English cut.
All right.
Thank you. Now, keep in mind that a standard English cut rib is going to weigh about 1/4 pound. We'll lose nearly a half of that weight. During the cooking process, you'll want to plan on a minimum of 2 pieces per diner, or in the case of me by myself, 4.
Here you go, sir.
Thank you very much. Say, how do you like yours?
Ooh, I like to slowly smoke and grill mine while lightly brushing them with a mead reduction.
Wow. You ever think of having your own cooking show?
You know, now that you mention it...
Good luck with that. If I have a stew credo, it is this. The stewer will never miss an opportunity to create flavor. With that in mind, we toss our meat with a tablespoon of kosher salt and sear it on a hot cast iron griddle. I like cast iron because nothing holds heat better. I like griddle because there's plenty of real estate. So when I'm ready to flip the meat over to brown all of these sides, there'll be plenty of fresh metal to do the branding. Now, heat is a big deal here. You're going to want to park your griddle over high flame for at least 3 minutes before bringing the meat to the party. And if you cook on electric, it's going to take 5. Sorry, just the way it is. Now, this is not going to seal in juices, okay? But it is going to create a huge amount of flavor. There is, at this very moment, the symphony of chemical and physical changes going on involving amino acids, proteins, meat sugars, and about 6 gajillion other things. It would be pretty much impossible to actually name all of the substances involved, which is why we simply refer to this entire process as the Maillard reactions, after the famed French chemist who first investigated the phenomenon. French. Go figure. Anyway, the searing's going to take several minutes on each side, which gives us plenty of time to concoct a braising liquid. No, I mean a paste. And now for the paste. Whisk together a 1/4 cup of tomato paste with a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. I like the unfiltered kind. And a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, 1½ teaspoons. Love that smoky fermented fish flavor that gives out there. We'll also need some herbs, just mixed herb. I'd say a teaspoon and a half of anything containing some oregano and some thyme and some rosemary. There we go. And last but not least, 1 tablespoon of either hot, smoked, or sweet paprika. Hey, it sounds like we've hit Things ingredient of the day, paprika. Get out of my face. Let's see, I've got a disc around here someplace. P. Ah, here we go, paprika. Now, the spice that we call paprika is created by grinding dried sweet peppers such as capsicum annum into a fine powder. A native of South America, pepper plants first arrived in Hungary around 17th century, courtesy of refugees of Balkan states escaping the Turks, who were actively marauding at the time. By the late 18th century, paprika was firmly ensconced in Hungarian cuisine. Now, as to types, hot paprika isn't so much, chili hot as it is simply pungent. Sweet paprika isn't so much sweet as simply not pungent. The most commonly exported variety is called noble sweet, although smoked varieties are gaining popularity here in the United States. Now, since you have to buy it in ground form, you're going to want to keep it very, very tightly sealed in a cool place, and you're going to want to replace it every 8 months, give or take a month. Now, when your paste is thoroughly whisked and the meat is thoroughly browned, toss one into the other. Now, I'm aware that this is not exactly a braising liquid, but it is flavorful. It's thick enough to stick, and once juices start running out of the meat, there will be liquid aplenty. Now, let's talk for a moment about containment. You know, the word stew comes from an old French word, esteu, meaning stove or hot enclosure. And French cooks, understanding how important it is to keep moisture in, used to seal up their dry stews or daubs with a homemade library paste that they would chisel off when the multi-day cooking was done. Now, since it's easily shaped, tight sealing, and a fine heat conductor, I believe that heavy-duty aluminum foil would be the first choice for a braise like this. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, cooking tomato products in aluminum is insane because the acid dissolves the metal. Well, you're right. A few little aluminum ions may slip out of their normal place, but it would take a very, very long time for that leaching to reach anything close to a toxic level. Months, probably. Now, if you really want to see aluminum dissolve, watch this. If you cook or store something containing a lot of acid, say tomatoes, in a steel or better yet a cast iron vessel and cover it tightly with aluminum foil so that the foil is in contact with the acid, well, you're making a battery. And in no time, the aluminum will erode and pit wherever it is touching that acid. Since our braise doesn't involve two metals, which is key, I'm not very worried. That's gross. Now, a tight seal is important, so crimp all the way down one side and then crimp up both of the ends. Nice and tight. There. That ought to do the trick. But look, we've got company. Hi.
Monsieur, where are the aromatics?
Oh, of course. In most culinary traditions, braising meats never face the heat without a backup team of aromatic vegetables. From France, we have mirepoix, 2 parts onion, 1 part each carrot and celery. Up the ante with parsley and garlic, and you've got an Italian battuto, which is close to a Spanish sofrito. Now, the Chinese are partial to ginger, garlic, chilies, and scallion. All of these combos are meant to form flavor platforms on which braises can be built. But you know what? I don't buy it. I don't.
Mon Dieu!
Mamma mia! Dishonor!
Hey, back off there, big guy.
What
Sorry.
right do you have to spit in the face of tradition?
What right do I have? They're my groceries.
Hey.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Tradition. Well, now that we have that out of the way, we can get to cooking. Our little bundle of joy goes in a cold oven, and I'm going to slide a little pan and set under it just in case there's any dripping. We will set for 250 degrees. Now, the total cooking time is going to be right at 4 hours, but I want to just take a look at it every hour or so, so we'll set my favorite timer to 60 minutes. Why will it take so long to cook? Why do we use such a low temperature? Patience, grasshopper. Well, the cooking is now halfway over, and everything looks fine. You may see a little bit of dripping in there, even if you did properly seal your foil pouch, simply because the pressure can build up to the point that it'll pop a little hole to escape, and that's fine. So, what's really going on in there? Well, you see, the unctuous body and lip-smacking goodness of braised meat is made possible by a curious chemical characteristic of a particular tissue type common to all mammals. In your body, right now, there are 3 major types of connective tissue holding you up and together. For instance, we have elastin. Now, these fibers make up tough, gristly stuff like cartilage. We'll see a little bit of this later. Not a lot of culinary use there. Another one is called a reticulin, or reticular fibers. They're very, very fine and form the outer skins of things like your lungs and kidneys and whatnot. They're not good eats. Then there's collagen. Now, our muscles, bones, tendons, and such are all held together with this stuff. Collagen is, well, it's really the glue that holds us together. Now, here's the strange and wonderful part. When exposed to water and long, low heat, collagen molecules break down and rearrange to another protein structure called gelatin, which makes most glues possible, as well as a host of classic desserts, not the least of which these delicious little gummy, well, later. The key to this magical conversion is heat control, and although many braise and stew recipes call for simmering long and low on the cooktop, the truth is even a top-notch burner makes a ring of fire, and there is no way to control a braise with a ring of fire. Nope. The tool that we want to use is the oven. This is the only safe spot. We can control the temperature in here and count on the heat to come at the food from all directions. Since air conducts heat much slower than water, the meat will heat slowly, and that will give us maximum collagen to gelatin conversion without overcooking the meat. Time's up, my luscious lovelies.
Now, our little metallic parcel here doesn't just bear one precious commodity, but three. That's right, there's the meat, of course, but there's also the liquid and the fat that's cooked out. So we want those badly. They are full of goodness. I'm just going to open up the end of this and let that drain out. Aluminum cools down pretty quickly. There we go. Now, the meat, we want to cool, so I'm just going to move that up to a cooling rack, and we're going to leave it here on the counter for an hour to cool down. Oh, don't worry. The food police aren't going to come busting through the window or anything. Just, you know, don't put a raw chicken on top of this. Now, take a look. You can see that the meat is very, very soft. It's almost like pulled pork in there. We've had complete collagen to gelatin conversion. But when this cools for an hour, and if we refrigerate it after that, we'll see that this is going to change. More on that later. Now, this liquid, we need to get into something that's a little easier to handle. So I'm going to drain that into this beaker, and then we will move this to the refrigerator. Well, that's what we're looking for. No, not that. That nice solidified disc of highly flavored beef fat, which is settled on top. And just use a little knife and pop that right out. Now, if it doesn't solidify properly in your refrigerator, you can always stick it down into the freezer for a little while. And wipe off the bottom, and you've got yourself a super high-powered culinary hockey puck, which we are definitely going to make use of now. Oh, you too. And now, finally, we assemble the finished dish. Place a large saucier or a saute pan over medium heat and drop in about a tablespoon's worth of your fat puck. Wrap and refrigerate the rest for some other delectable application. Waka, 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 waka. Never mind. While that melts, let's harvest some veggies. Peel and slice 1 large yellow or white onion. Next, we cube 1 pound of red potatoes. Now, let's take time for a little botanical lesson here. This is a red potato, also known as a waxy potato. This is a russet potato, also called a mealy potato. This potato will hold its shape when cooked. This turns into mashed potatoes. This cannot be used as a substitution for this. Are we clear? Good. We cut. We're looking for a medium dice here, and you don't have to take off the skin. It's pretty tasty stuff. Once you've got your potatoes cut, you're going to want to give those a soak in cold water to halt the inevitable browning. When the fat is good and hot, add your onions along with a big fat pinch of kosher salt, and break the slices up into rings. Then drain and add the potatoes along with a healthy grind of black pepper. Next in the pot, the reserved cooking liquid. Very important. Lid up, drop the heat, and simmer for half an hour. Now would be a good time to retrieve our meat. Now take a look. You'll notice that it has firmed up considerably. In fact, it's downright hard. Why? Well, gelatin, of course. You see, as the gelatin cools, well, come here. See, as gelatin cools, it moves from a suspended colloidal state to a gel state, which, if concentrated, can be quite strong. This, for instance, is ballistic gelatin, about an 8-to-1 ratio of water to gelatin. Crime labs use this to study the impact that bullets and other projectiles have on, well, us. So this is my ballistics buddy, Wes, and his...
45 caliber semi-automatic pistol.
With?
Loaded with 230 grain jacketed hollow points.
Perfect. Well, I'll tell you what, Wes, take a bite of some Jell-O down there. Obviously, this stuff is tough, and that is why our meat gets pretty hard when it cools down. Now, what's really interesting, though, is that once gelatin has reached the gel state, it takes more heat to redissolve it than it did to render it from collagen in the first place. And believe it or not, that is a good thing. Since bone and gristle are never good eats, unless you're a rabid Dotson, they have to be removed before we add the meat to the final stew. Now, the bone, well, that's easy enough to find, and odds are they'll just pull right away. The gristle, that's going to cling to the meat. It's not so easy to get off, and that's why I use these little guys to just snip that away, easier than a knife. Now, you could certainly serve these chunks intact, but I rather snip them down into bite-sized pieces. Now, this would, of course, be impossible had we not cooled the meat, because there wouldn't be enough solid gelatin to hold the meat together. I tell you, when it comes to stew, time is your friend. Okay, just put the meat on top of the veggies. Don't stir in. Recover and heat, well, just until the meat's hot again. Take about 10 minutes. The meat is perfectly heated through, but it's not falling apart. That's because we let it cool down before reheating, and that is why stews, braises, fricassees, and blanquettes are always better the second day. As for the potatoes, well, I'll admit, they're not a standard goulash guest, but I do like the textural counterpoint, and the starch seems to thicken things up a bit. Of course, if you're after more of a traditional American stew, you could add a little beef stock, some cut-up carrots, and some peas, and, well, you'd be right at home on the range. Either way, it's a stew, it's a science lesson, it's a meal, and it's absolutely good eats.